Hi guys, Andrew Zelter's on.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, everybody that's joined thus far. We'll just, be hanging out till the meeting populates. Hi, Noreen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Sure can.
The last time we had that problem, good. Hey, man.
Hello, Noreen.
And just so everybody knows, I dropped a link to the agenda and the attendance form into the chat box already, if anybody needs to reference that.
Hey, Jeffrey, it's Ken.
Hi, Ken.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing really well, thanks. Hope you had a good holiday weekend.
It was very nice. And now here we are diving in.
Exactly.
Excuse me, do we need to fill out the attendance form, or do you do that, or how does that work, Ken?
Sorry, if you could, it would be great if each person that's on, if you fill out the attendance form, it saves a whole bunch of time. So that way I don't have to do a roll call.
Okay.
And it should be kind of mistake proof, but it is the first round. So if you have any questions, just shout out.
Okay, I'll do it now.
I'm not finding the link. You said you put it in the chat.
Yep, I'll add it right again. I added it right at the top. So I'm happy to keep adding it, no big deal. It's also linked on the agenda. It says attendance form on the agenda as well.
Great. And apologies, Jeffrey, I have to step out a little bit early, but I will stick around as long as I can.
That's okay. Thanks, Ken.
Yep.
I do love Zoom meetings because at the top of the hour when they start, boom, your Hollywood squares just explode on the screen. Everybody, just so you know, I did paste a link for those that are continuing to pop in. There's a link to the agenda, as well as a link to the attendance form in the chat box. And if everybody could fill out that attendance form, that'll save me from calling the roll, and we can track attendance that way. We'll give this another minute or two.
That was very easy, that attendance form.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm glad to hear that.
Lynn, did you look at page 2 of the attendance form?
Oh, I don't know. What did that say?
I am joking.
Oh, I'm like, oh, I thought there'd be one easy thing today, the day after a holiday.
I thought I pasted the wrong link as soon as somebody said there was a page 2.
Very funny. I'll get you back.
I will share those links one more time because I know a few more folks just joined. I've put the link to the agenda as well as the link to the attendance form in the chat box, everybody. The attendance form is also linked on the agenda, so you can click on it from there as well. Just hoping to streamline that attendance process by having everybody fill that out during the meeting. It automatically populates a spreadsheet that we'll use to track attendance. So if you can take a minute to do that, that would be great. It is nice to see everybody's faces and to see you all. Everybody looks a bit more tan since our last meeting, which is always great, and it goes to show we hopefully had a great August. I'm recording the meeting today for a couple of reasons. One, for just record purposes and minute taking, and also just because it's a virtual meeting. I think this is a pretty important and exciting meeting that we're having today. We definitely have a quorum, and it's 6:03. Daniel, you're on, right? First Vice Chair. Awesome. Oh, with that Pier 40 background too. Is that what I see there, Mr. Miller? Nice.
Yes. I'm just trying to fill out all my forms, which I haven't done.
Gotcha.
You want me to take notes for you?
That would be great. I am recording the meeting also, but if we could, like you did last time.
Imagine.
What was that?
Okay. I said will do, yes.
Thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from our previous meeting, which are linked to the agenda.
I noticed several names were not quite right, like Kira Levy, who I know is here. I saw her in the Hollywood Squares, was listed with her name wrong, and I think Siddhartha's name from the River Project was spelled wrong.
Yeah, there probably were some misspellings in there. It was, as you know, it was a marathon of a meeting.
Yeah.
So I apologize for not screening.
I like the ending, saying that it had set a historic record.
Right, I wasn't going to eliminate the facts from the record that the first vice chair put in there. But I'll definitely clean those names up. Were there any other questions or things missing from the minutes?
An observation, Jeffrey, that it says that I asked a question as to who advised the trust on the historic ship location of Pier 97, and there is no answer. Is that the way it happened?
No, I remember the trust answering that question.
Okay, great. Then it'd be wonderful if that was added. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna not entertain a motion to adopt these minutes since we're gonna make a couple of adjustments to them. So if folks are okay, I'll table this till the next meeting and we'll get those cleaned up. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Great. Just a couple of other housekeeping items, generally speaking. So also linked to your agenda is our current contact list. It's the contact list for formal members of the advisory council. Please take a look at that. It's also for your Rolodex, basically. It's everybody's name, their association, as well as their email address. It also shows the vacancies that we have on the board, which come from various appointments that are able to be made. There are a couple. Let's see. One of the things that we are looking to begin to clarify is a number of folks have alternates. If they cannot attend, a person is allowed to attend in their place. It doesn't give them an extra vote. It's still one vote, one person or one organization. But if you do have an alternate that's been designated, if you can send that my way, we can get that updated.
Jeffrey, this is Mary. I noticed that the Manhattan Borough President is not on the list, which seems like it's just an oversight, but I couldn't find that office listed.
I will double check, but I don't think the Manhattan Borough President, I mean, I know that
Formally on the council.
is not a named elected official in the Hudson River Park Act, perhaps because she appoints members directly to our board. That may have been the thought originally.
Okay,
Makes
thank
sense.
you. That didn't occur to me, but it just was an obvious, to me, an omission, but that explains it. Thank you.
So basically, we're just looking to make sure this is cleaned up and as complete as possible. And like I said, wanting to make sure everybody has access to that list as well. I'm also going to be, we're trying to build out sort of a public notice list as well. So if there's organizations or groups or people that you feel should get meeting notices, we can figure out how to make that happen. Excuse me. And we're happy to continue finding ways to populate that as well. But just technically speaking, the advisory council members list is for advisory council correspondence and official communication only. Obviously, if you have a question for a particular member, feel free to pull that email from that list. But just wanting to share that with everybody so folks have that information and see who's on there. Any other questions on the contact list? Great.
Sorry, I don't.
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how are we ensuring our compliance with the public meetings law? Because it says on the trust website that all of the meetings are open to the public, but if we're only sending notices to ourselves, then it would seem as the public has no real understanding that we are meeting. Or I looked on the website, there's no like trust report or any of that type of stuff. So
The meeting
I don't know what the issue is.
was posted on the trust website on the advisory council page.
Yeah, over this weekend, the Labor Day weekend, yes. I'm
Yeah.
saying
Is
we
there
knew
a
this
timeframe
weeks in
that's
advance. Excuse me. I'm saying we knew this weeks in advance, and there should be a way to notify the public that it's, advisory committee is meeting and encourage them to continue, consider participation. That's a way of broadening people's understanding and involvement in the park.
Yeah, I
don't
agree.
know how that gets done.
No, I absolutely agree. And as I've said many times, we're continuing to be a work in progress in terms of figuring out, the benchmarks we want to hit. I've worked with Noreen to establish a channel through which communications will come from the trust. We're looking to do that agenda as well as everybody's reports from the trust, from our committees, 7 days prior to our meeting, so a week before each time now going forward. At which point in time, we'll also be posting that information to the trust website. What we don't have as an advisory council is like a listserv, right? Like the chairs are volunteers. There's a sort of, there's not a database necessarily, which is why I asked in that contact list discussion, if folks have individuals that they want to be included on meeting announcements, we can certainly begin to create that kind of a list. But that the plan going forward is that when I share, or when the chair shares information about the agenda and all the relevant information, those reports, all that good stuff, that will also go onto the trust website as well.
Okay.
Jeffrey, is it possible, to Tom's point, to just put on the website as soon as we know the next date of the meeting, to just post
They're
that?
up there. Yeah, they're up there right now because we they're on our current agenda. And so all, I believe, through the end of the year, or if not through November, our October and November meetings dates are on there. The December meeting should be as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Jeffrey, we had discussed this earlier about the trust's support for the volunteer advisory council. So I don't know if you've discussed with Noreen any way that they might support our making sure the public knows what we're up to. That's all.
Yeah, we definitely have, and I've been now in touch with the person who uploads to the website, and so I'll be communicating with them directly, and again, sending through our agendas, which it was quite a bit to get everything linked to that agenda, but that's gonna be sort of my process going forward. So that way it's a super easy document to be circulated, quite frankly, because you can link out to all the reports on there. And that way it's sort of very centralized, was part of the goal for that.
You did a great job. This is better than we've ever been prepared before, so I'm not really giving you a hard time.
And definitely big props to Noreen and her crew, because it wasn't just me doing all the work, it was me working with the trust to make all that happen. So thank you for acknowledging and appreciating. And we, have worked hard to get to this point, and we're excited to sort of keep this ball rolling now.
I have just one really stupid question, which is, where on the Hudson River Park website is the information about the advisory council?
So there are a couple. There are a couple of places. At the last advisory council meeting, I announced that we were just about to relaunch the website. And we did relaunch it. There's a lot of new content on it, but there are sections that are still in need of improvement. So there is a section in the About the Trust section that has the advisory council. The meeting is on the homepage, and then there's also an advisory council section, which Jeffrey and I have discussed building out. However, frankly, the advisory council wants it. If you guys want photos of Zoom meetings and whatever else we want, we can do all of that. But it's, you know, we feel that it's not ours to determine that. But we've also been working on creating advisory council letterhead as something to make you guys look more official. There are other things that Jeffrey and I have been talking about and that are in production. So the homepage of the website has the advisory council meeting tonight on it. And then there's a section on the advisory council that is a separate area where you can click to see the members and then the bylaws, and then there'll be a build out of the minutes and other things like that based on my feedback with Jeffrey.
So is that under the, in About Us, is that under the Hudson River Park Trust? Because it's not its own heading. Sorry.
Right, it's not, because it comes with the trust.
I see. Thank you.
I dropped the direct links, Susanna, just so you know, in the chat box too, for those who.
And no, I don't mean for me. I mean for the public.
Sure, gotcha. So with that though, is the point of how we are looking to list our membership. Right now, it links out to, I believe, a PDF or a separate website listing of who we are. Technically right now, organizations are, elected as members, and then there's individuals of the public, and then there's a whole bunch of appointees. So what we want to have is a proper membership list as well that is accessible. And so that's another thing that I'm flagging today, to have folks take a look based on our contact list, the name of your organization, which is, the entity that serves on the council, or if you're an individual that was elected or appointed, that's the framework through which we're going to publicize that list of members. Wrong screen. Any other questions? We're doing really good because we got to get through a couple more things because we have very special guests tonight, which I'm super excited to be joined by State Parks Commissioner, State DOT, to talk about a topic we have been discussing as a group for a long time, that our respective community boards, our elected officials have, dealt a lot with. So just want to be respectful of the fact that a whole bunch of reports were circulated with the purpose of allowing those to be read in advance and to be absorbed. And hopefully the point being, there isn't a whole lot of unexpected discussion. There was a topic that was raised outside of the report, brought to my attention and Daniel's attention as well, that Noreen is more than happy and is going to address. But just want to sort of lay that groundwork of reports being out there to be absorbed, and that we'll continue to tailor them going forward. Noreen, with that, I'll kick it over to you for our trust report and update.
Sure. As you probably can see, there are, again, several members of our staff on this. So I'm really going to address only the one topic that Daniel asked me to describe in a bit more detail, and then I'll kick it over briefly to several other staff members here. We've mentioned this a few times before, but we've been working for a year now on what we call the Tribeca Habitat Enhancements Project. In September last year, in fact, the governor launched Revive Mother Nature, his Revive Mother Nature initiative in the park by deploying an oyster gabion near Pier 26. And at the same time announced that that was just the first of a bunch of oysters and other shellfish and other habitat enhancements that would be planned for the Tribeca area of the park. We worked very closely. We didn't have a specific project at that time, but we started working on a project and had always had the intention of doing habitat enhancements in part in the Tribeca area, because a big section of that area is a reserve in our Estuarine Sanctuary Management Plan. So we worked with the Habitat Enhancement Committee and Research Committee of our Technical Advisory Committee of the Estuarine Sanctuary Management Committee. I see Rob Pirani here on my screen, but there are a number of other people Billion Oyster Project, Hudson River Foundation, some scientists from various institutions that are also part of that group. And we developed a plan that I call kind of the kit of parts, a group of specific individual components, up to 304 individual components that would be deployed from Pier 26 to Pier 34. And that if successful could be replicated because they are the same types of conditions that exist throughout other sections of the park. So briefly, the components are biohuts, which are essentially cages within cages with oyster shell in the innermost cage. And those are attached to piles beneath existing piers. There are textured concrete piles that would be in the Pier 32 pile field, which is already designated for habitat. Those would be essentially sleeves that would be placed on top of some of the existing piles there. Some framing would exist above those to kind of solidify them, reef balls on the bottom, and the textured concrete is for attached organisms. And we can also suspend, if desired at some point. One of the scientists had suggested perhaps oyster ropes and other things like that from the framing. Another technique are oyster gabions. That is what Billion Oyster Project has been using throughout the harbor. Those would be placed directly on the river bottom in various areas. One of the things that we had done was do a kind of detailed bathymetric survey, and we found debris fields from former piers that were located in this zone. Hudson River silt is very soupy. It's famous for being that. And we had flagged for the Habitat Committee some concern that deploying gabions would have a lot of sinking. The TAC was very interested, nevertheless, I think, in seeing what happened as kind of a research initiative. So the gabions and some of the reef balls would be deployed on a combination of the debris fields where they probably would not sink and subside, and the open water areas where they might or might not. We would be monitoring that as a condition of the permit, I'm sure. And then the last technique is something that we had actually originally deployed several years ago as a research project. We call them oyster wraps. Again, at the Pier 32 pile field, we have wraps that people involved in our Celebrate Oyster program helped create. They're around a number of piles. They've actually been successful. And we had designed it originally as a 3-year research project that would have to sunset at the end of this year. Because they've been successful, we wrapped that into the permit application that we have, and those would also be among the components that would be deployed. So there is nothing that is basically going to not either be attached to an extant pile or be at the river bottom. So there is no effect to the kayakers that are principally in that area. And then in addition, a fairly large section of that area is already a designated reserve in our ESMP. So the intent, in fact, is to have habitat enhancements in that type of zone. If anyone, I know you're very mindful of time, Chair LaFrancois, so you know, I can answer questions or keep going as desired.
I think that this came about because those that were launching their boats were concerned whether or not the infrastructure of this habitat was going to affect or endanger those who were getting into man-powered craft. And the sound is that it was taken into consideration to not affect people who would be in water on boats. Is that
we certainly anticipated that people would object to that if we were obstructing boating access.
Got it. Any quick question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a map of the area? Is there a report that says exactly what's going to happen? And is there a public review process so the public gets a chance to review and have some input on it?
There's a map that we've previously shared with our TAC.
Oh.
We can certainly share it as
Yeah.
well.
Wonderful.
DEC undertook a public review process for its already in process permit application. So they actually just had their public comment period. The Army Corps has not yet gone determined what its next step will be. We need permits from the Army Corps and DEC. And we had brought this to our board meeting because of the environmental assessment that had to be done. There was a neg deck at the July board meeting, I think. And we had shown on the screen a graphic of what the plan was at that point.
But we had met last month and you presented this, but you didn't tell us there was a public review session going on. Or
I
people
said that
might
there
have.
was going to be one. I mean, honestly,
Oh, okay. All right.
I am happy to answer any questions, but there are so many topics that are always going on.
Yeah.
We've mentioned this particular project at 3 previous meetings, not in the detail that I just did,
Right.
but I'm happy to answer
Which
that
is in
detail
detail,
as it's
right.
available. So
Okay.
I think it's a work in progress, as Jeffrey said, and we can do what the chair wants.
Jeffrey, if I could just ask for that map, I think it'd be great for us to see it. And then there's only one thing that you said in briefing us was the suspended ropes, the oyster ropes. So that's going to be anchored to the bottom. How high?
Yeah.
No? How does that work?
No, and those are not even necessarily one of the initial things that would be done. But one of within the Pier 32 pile field will be clusters of textured concrete sleeves placed on top of certain of the piles. And those will be framed with a kind of an above grade timber framing. And one of the suggestions that Jeffrey Levinton of SUNY Stony Brook, I think, had made was that perhaps at some point, but this was not part of our permit application, we could extend ropes from those frames, but again, it would be within the Pier 32 pile field. So it would not be out in the water area.
Right. I think the way the RFP read, I think was concerning. It just seemed like it was a really wide area. And you're really, what you're doing is you're telling us it's really at Pier 32 where most of this work is happening.
Pier 32, under Pier 34, and then certain river bottom area at the old, in the open water areas and at the old debris fields. I'd be happy to share that.
That'd be, yeah, I think a map would put a lot of folks at ease. That'd be great. Thanks, Noreen. I really appreciate you taking the time to educate us.
I know we're tight for time. Tina, our report included a lot of information, including on sanctuary matters. And we said that we'd be happy to talk in a future meeting about the recent study that we did to kind of continue advancing estuarium planning. Tina, maybe we just wait for that for the next time unless someone has a burning question. But if you could just update on the ESMP and Submerge.
Sure. So since we last spoke with you all, we've met with our 3 technical advisory committees about the sanctuary management plan, as well as Hudson River Park's board sanctuary committee to update them on COVID and just our current progress with the document. So where it is now is that DEC is in the process of reviewing a draft, and we're still hoping to move it into public review this fall, at which point you'll be able to read and review and share comments with us. So that's technically where we are in terms of the ESMP. And then on the programming side for the sanctuary, we're really excited to announce we're moving our virtual programs and expanding to do our Submerge Marine Science Festival virtually this month. It's going to be Thursday, September 24th from 11 a.m. to 4:30. And we're really excited. It's giving us the opportunity to showcase partners and in different environments all through New York City in exciting ways. So we have Gotham Whale showing humpbacks in the harbor. We have Billion Oyster Project with oyster reefs in Canarsie, and all types of partners that are contributing to the event. So we'd love support in your organizations promoting that. If you have any teachers, parents, contacts that you think would be interested in Submerge, you're more than interested to reach out to me, and I'll share some information about the event as well as just some ways to get involved.
Thank you, Tina.
Mm-hmm.
I think Deb Kuska is on. Deb?
Hi, Deb.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Yeah, I'll give you a quick update and not take up too much time. As far as operations goes, we've been keeping pace with the signage that supports the social distancing and staying healthy, following the city and state guidelines. We work closely with our programs and graphics folks to refresh those signs. Our horticulture team is refreshing the social distancing circles on the lawns. We will continue that effort through September. And have recently installed hand sanitizers in the building at Pier 40 and at the playgrounds. Those will be receiving some signage shortly, but the asset is out there and we are maintaining it filled with hand sanitizers, and it is being used. So we're happy to be able to open up the facilities and do our best to enforce the social distancing, which is really suggested. And the mask wearing, PEP has been handing out thousands and thousands of masks, and Dennis can speak to that when he jumps on.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
You want to just give a little teeny update on gardening?
Oh, sure.
Horticulture?
Yeah, our hort folks, again, they've taken on the added task of refreshing these circles on Pier 45 and Pier 84. They are keeping pace, or trying their best to keep pace with the weeds and the vegetative maintenance. We are short on the seasonal staff. We don't have the full complement that we've had, and with the volunteer events, we've really lost a lot of the helping hands that typically get us through some of the laborious tasks of weeding and mulching and whatnot. So, the team is doing the best that they can. We're actually looking forward to Pier 26 opening in the very near future, and yeah, they want to be here and they want to work. It is quite a challenge. Even with the busy park and the busy bikeway, we've noticed a certain increase in visitorship, and that does make the logistics quite a bit more difficult.
I just have a quick comment, Jeffrey. I don't know if this is your area, Deb, but ever since the city reduced the number of trash cans that they're actually servicing and took a bunch away, all the trash cans on West Street are overpiling with garbage because of the additional traffic in the park. And I wonder if Hudson River Park is having the same problems with its receptacles. And something certainly we brought up in the community board level, but I know that state's on the line here. I think we need more trash cans near the park because we have so many people visiting, and it's really a health hazard right outside on West Street.
Well, we've been looking closely at our receptacle placement, and we're tracking the bags that we're pulling. We'll be compiling all of that information, really be able to analyze it so that we are ensuring that we have the cans in the proper location, and ensuring that the frequency, the service frequency is proper too. Anything on the east side, though, we are not responsible to manage, but that's something to note. I have not heard any feedback from our team that there has been excessive amounts of trash in the park, though.
I mean, I think, Daniel, if there are particular areas where you're observing that overflow, we can look particularly at whether we have bins in that vicinity on our side of the road and see if there's any kind of improvement that we can get on the eastern side if we deploy differently on our side.
Yeah, for sure.
Great, I'll send you a picture of one particular problem spot, which has 3 trash cans worth of garbage, but only 1 trash can. And it's right across the park. I'll send that to you, Noreen. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
That'd be great.
Thanks, Daniel. And thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Noreen, is Kira next? Sorry.
I think we have Tom Linden and Dennis on quickly. Tom or Kira, do you want to go very quickly?
I'll make a quick introduction. I think last meeting we introduced, of course, the Summer of Fun that has been virtual for the entire summer. And I will say we are very excited about the progress that we've made this summer. We have a great variety of programming, and we have great reception to it. People are following very closely on live, and then more importantly, they're going back to the website to view this programming. And Kira, you want to just give a quick highlight of some of the stuff that we've got going on?
Really, just quickly, we have more than 7,500 people tuning in on average each week. All of our programs are being made available on our YouTube channel, and will eventually also be linked on our website for people who watch on Encore performances at their leisure.
And we will continue through the month of September and into October as well. That's all right.
Dennis, do you have any particular safety updates other than the bikeway? Dennis? I saw him on here earlier. Maybe he's on mute.
See.
I'll go tell him.
Okay. It's okay. We can keep going, Jeffrey, if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Tony, anything besides what you shared in your report or big things to highlight, perhaps the Ungala?
Sure. I did want to mention that our volunteer program is up and running, even though at a limited capacity due to the pandemic. But yes, as Jeffrey mentioned, our Ungala is on October 2nd at 8 p.m. The nice thing about this year is there are all different levels of donations. It will be completely virtual. We're a little over halfway to our fundraising goal, so every small amount, large amount counts. I don't know if that's me. You guys hear me?
Go ahead now, Tony, see if that's any better.
Yes, and the nice thing about this year's Ungala is the different levels, all levels, there's no minimum. That's all I have besides the volunteer program. And everything else is in the report, including budget cuts from the city and state.
Thank you for that. Mary, anything big picture besides you had in the report to share, which again, thank you for getting that together so that that could be shared as well.
No, I don't think I have anything to add. I'm happy to take questions if someone does have a question.
I do just want to flag, Tom, I don't have an answer to it, but Noreen, there's a couple of comments on 2 points on your report in the comment about one about Pier 79, one about Pier 26. I'm not sure we take them up now, later, but it just might be something to make note of that we can follow up with. And whether or not it's germane to the trust answering the question as well.
Sure. On Pier 79, we did address boater safety. It's a principal question for us. We had said in the report that we think Nancy's idea of having a boater meeting makes a lot of sense. The lease for Pier 79 goes back to 2001. And I mean, I guess I should say this. We do not have the ability to disapprove ferries. Like the trust does not have that approval. So we have the ability, and we are using that ability to talk about land safety, water safety, a lot of the types of things, Tom, that you have raised and that Nancy's raised. But we don't get to just say yes or no in particular terms to the ferry operation there.
Completely understood. My concern is, having been a ferry operator and carrying over 1 million people a year for a decade, that wakes from ferries do create damage. They do create, movement in local vessels that are moored, like the Zwicker and the Lilac. And so the historic vessels, the small kayakers, the outriggers, the marinas at Chelsea Piers will all be affected by the transit every 40 minutes of vessels going north and south. The thing that I was suggesting is that the trust request that New York State DOT respect 100-foot or 100-foot distance from the pier, so that when they're traversing the west side, and I've seen this happen in Brooklyn very recently, that they cut as fast, they got a schedule to keep. So they cut as quickly as they can, and often it's close to the pier, and you've just invested, or we've just invested hundreds of millions of dollars in rebuilding these piers. So adding to creating something that will slowly over time deteriorate the piles, or could, That's what I'm talking about, is looking at that, keeping them off the pier head so that they don't impact the boats in the park.
Thanks for explaining that. Yeah, no, wakes, I remember Kathy Drew raising wakes at Pier 26, the old one, many, many years ago. It's absolutely a concern, and thank you for explaining that. Yes, wakes and that kind of movement is important to us as well. And Tom, if you have like a diagram of what I'm just not clear on what you quite mean by 100 feet off. So if you could sketch that out for me, that'd be helpful.
It's just setting a boundary. With it, they did that in New Jersey. New York Waterway did it when they were getting wake damage. They actually had maps where if you went over a certain line, a beep went off in the pilot house, so you didn't get too close to the Liberty Landing Marina and the Harts Mountain Marina that were having a lot of boat damage issues. And I'm sure Chelsea Piers would be extremely interested in this, since they have had wake problems when Sea Streak was operating on the East River in the past.
And it's been a problem at Pier 25 too, not for Lilac, just because of the quality of the hull that we're in. Lilac was made to be seagoing.
I think the trust totally gets that wakes are a concern. Tom's proposed a boundary. Tom, Noreen suggested if there's some kind of graphic you could sketch out of what you might think is appropriate, or maybe a parallel to what New Jersey did that we can flip to them. That could be a great starting point for consideration.
Okay, sorry if I seem to go on a tangent, but it's actually a continuing problem. There used to be a no wake committee on the harbor to try to address it, but it continues. It's a problem at all the piers.
Sure.
Yeah, and we've been part of some of those discussions too, so I do understand.
I'm gonna, Tammy, I see you have your hand up from CB1, and then we're gonna go to our guest portion of the meeting.
I would actually say that we have a lot of experience in Community Board 1 with wake damage. If you want to think of from the additional ferries that we now have going in and out of the Brookfield Pier and the damage that's done south of that. So anything that you can do looking forward and looking ahead to try and mitigate and reduce that would be seriously important. I can tell you the Battery Park City Authority spends millions on fixing and refixing the pilings and everything else that is specifically have to do with the boat and wake damage from the boats that skim along the side. You know, there's nothing like 100 feet. I mean, I'm talking 20 at best, you know, from the side of Battery Park City. 50 would be a luxury, 100 would be heaven, quite frankly. So whatever you can do to take a look at that and put some kind of measures and really ask people for safer waterways would be benefit not only to the damage of the infrastructure, but also for, if you think about the kayakers and the small boaters who are typically closer inshore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna end this portion of the meeting.
Hey, Jeffrey?
Yep.
It's Dennis. Sorry, I had to switch over to Kira's line. I had some issues with my phone. It wasn't unmuting itself. If I could just give a quick, so over the weekend, PEP had a rescue on the river, which was a very good job done by the officers, Dela Cruz, Johnson, Sergeant Condalaska, and Francis. They had a female who fell into the water after going over the side of the railing, and they actually used the life rafts that are along the park. And unfortunately, she was very tired as they were trying to pull her up. So they ended up doing the next best thing. They were able to pull the rope over to the side where the rocks are by Pier 51, and they were able to remove her from the water. And they had a very good save this weekend. So very proud of PEP. They did a great job. Just a couple of updates. We're currently working with PEP now to try to come up with a new system for plotting incidents, whether it's quality of life to crimes to any kind of incident. They're in the testing phase of it now, and looks like it's working well. And hopefully that will, going forward, that'll allow us to help plot where incidents are occurring, and we could better deploy the PEP officers. We've also increased the bike training that they've been receiving, And you should be seeing in the park more bike patrols, which are very helpful. It gives them a better vantage point. In fact, the night of the rescue, they were both on bicycles, and because of the higher vantage point, the officers were able to see the female inside in the water. So I think that's definitely a benefit. And there's a couple other things that they've been doing a lot of education on the Esplanade regarding bikes, electric scooters, making sure people understand that this is still a park. You're not allowed to bring them in. And in fact, the other night they were able to, there was a couple Revel scooters that they were able to block in and able to issue them summonses for being on the Esplanade. So, PEP's been doing a lot of work, and, hopefully going forward, you'll see them out there and, doing all sorts of enforcement. And obviously they're doing great jobs with, rescues and everything else that's thrown at them with COVID and handing out masks. So, they've been doing a great job. So, but thank you. And sorry, I had the issue with the phone there.
Thank you for that. With this, I'm going to move to the guest portion of our meeting. This came about because it's, I think, been expected to come about for quite some time. Back in April, the Executive Committee of the Advisory Council sent a letter to State DOT, State Parks, and the Governor requesting an emergency expansion of the Greenway to better accommodate for social distancing, a significant increase in cyclist use of the Greenway, being that it's also the busiest bike path in North America as well. And after that, there was a snowball effect. All three community boards that lined the park, as well as our elected officials, sent a similar letter echoing the same concern. Tonight, we are joined by a number of folks who I will allow to introduce themselves shortly, in part because the elected officials that the letter that our elected officials sent extended an invitation to them to attend the advisory council meeting to give them a chance to respond to our letter and request accordingly. So with that, I want to introduce, I believe it's Craig Rule, who's the Regional Director for State DOT. I think State Parks Commissioner Eric Kulisade is on with us. And I'm not sure of anybody else.
I'm here.
Eric, thank you, Commissioner, for being here. And Craig, are you here as well?
I am. I'm here.
Great, thank you. So I would like to leave it to you two guys to introduce yourselves, and then we can sort of get into the topic of the letter, and we can have a conversation and take it from there.
So Eric Kulisade, I'm the Commissioner of the State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. I've been on the job for almost 2 years now, and obviously our role at Hudson River Park Trust is I and Commissioner Sagos from the DEC are on the board of the Hudson River Park Trust, and New York State Parks actually is the fee title owner of the interests in most of the piers really the upland portions of the Hudson River Park. The DEC owns the underwater portion. So that's our role as a board member and owner to which we lease out to the Hudson River Park Trust.
I'm Craig Rule. I'm the Regional Director for the New York State DOT in Region 11, which is New York City. I've also been on the job for just about 2 years, and we manage the highways in the city.
Which is of particular relevance here because 9A is the highway that traces the west side of Manhattan. And so, with that, this group has been meeting, since the inception of the park. And I think if we went back and looked at minutes from Greenway creation and park creation and all that stuff, it would be a topic of the advisory council and has been consistently at every single meeting because the Greenway directly affects the park. And that's where the impetus of our letter came from. Unless you're arriving by boat, you have to cross the highway, and then you have to cross the Greenway to get into the park. All three community boards I know have asked for safety improvements for access from the east side of the highway to the west side, which again is about getting to the park. And so we see this as a way to start a conversation, I think more with state DOT at this point in time, and to understand where parks might play a role. But given, the significant change in needs, the significant change in habits of New Yorkers right now was the impetus for the letter. And so would be curious to hear DOT in terms of a response, and parks if there's any consideration or thoughts to how we could work together on something like this. With regards to an expansion of the Greenway, the letter that we sent asked for an emergency expansion of the Greenway to take over the western lane of the West Side Highway, basically from 54th Street to the Battery, in summary. And that was consistently echoed in more sort of specific terms by each community that borders the park, and then sort of wrapped up as a whole into a letter from our elected officials as well.
Well, I guess I can start. We have a few concerns with removing a lane from the traveled way on the southbound side. One of which is congestion pricing. 9A is part of the congestion pricing plan, and MTA bridges and tunnels and the New York City DOT are including that in their traffic study of where traffic is going to go. And we haven't seen the results of that traffic study yet. One thing I do know is that they are looking to use some of the existing infrastructure along 9A, which would include the right lane on the southbound side, to place their electronic sensors, which are going to be used for the tolling or however it is they're going to collect the funds for congestion pricing. Another concern that we have is that taking out a lane on the southbound roadway could conceivably trigger an environmental study under SECRA or the NEPA, the federal NEPA, which we wouldn't know until we looked into that a little bit more. But that's a problem that the city's having on Queens Boulevard, where they wanted to add a bike lane and take out a lane, and it's caused them a little bit of grief as far as the environmental studies that the FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, has required. And then following up with that, another concern is, well, where would all the traffic go? And that would have to be part of that traffic study that might be required. There is a given volume of traffic on 9A, and I don't know where that would go. Are we going to push that into the local streets? So those are just some things that would have to be considered.
Jeffrey.
Sure, Tom, I'm going to just two things on that, and then I will go to members of the committee. And I also know that we're joined by members of the public as well, so I'm going to try to work through accordingly. The request was based on the emergency powers granted to the governor, which would preclude the need for an environmental study to take over the lane. The cities run into problems on Queens Boulevard because they're not using the mayor's executive powers to install it. So it actually wouldn't trigger the need for a study if the governor were to utilize the powers granted to him by the legislature in light of the pandemic. And then would be the initial response to that concern. And then if there's a definitive timeline for installation of congestion pricing, it would be great to understand it, because that is definitely, I think a lot of folks in this community see it as a really good thing, and could certainly bode well for making safer passage across the West Side Highway, and maybe not need as much of a demand on that as well. So it's something we're not sure of there, or if you know more of a timeline on that, that would be super helpful as well.
I have no information on the timeline for that. I mean, I think that the congestion pricing is hung up in a few different places. And
okay, Parks, anything to Commissioner add before we go to members of the committee?
Oh, Obviously it's a balance. I know you got a lot of traffic on that bikeway. Appreciate that it is a community issue. And obviously, we everything we do there, we do through the Hudson River Park Trust. But glad to be part of solutions. It's obviously a pretty unique area. It's a pretty unique bikeway with the kind of congestion you've got on it. Different from some of the other parks we operate, but sort of really happy to be part of the conversation.
Thank you for that. And just on the, the emergency factor, we didn't study what would happen when the subways were shut down overnight as well. So again, the request for this was steeped directly in the powers given to the governor by the legislature. And sort of through that, what can we do to allow New Yorkers to move better about town? I'm going to go to committee. Daniel, you've raised your hand. I'm going to ask members of the committee on the Zoom to please use the raise hand function. It's just an easier way to keep track of, if you scroll over your name, if you open the, there's two places for it. If you open the chat function and you scroll over your name, you'll see there's a way to raise your hand. And also at the bottom, mine's a little different, of the chat function as well, is the option to do so. Daniel, I'm going to kick it over to you to begin.
All right, thank you so much. First of all, I really want to thank both of you, Craig and Eric, for joining us. I think that's it's an honor to have you here, and thank you for listening to us. One of the things that I think the three community boards, the reason why we wrote the letters to you is because we have really dangerous conditions that are happening on the Greenway. There are too many cyclists and too thin of an area. And part of this isn't due because of the bollards that are there every street crossing. So I understand the Herculean task that it would take in order to move a lane into West Street. But is there anything that either of you can do to actually enforce the rules of the Greenway? Get the motor scooters that are going 30, 40 miles an hour on the Greenway and actually enforce it so that they're punished? Is there a way now that COVID is threatening social distancing and we have restaurants in the middle of major thoroughfares to reconsider the bollards? Maybe that doesn't make sense with increased traffic. And really put signage up that says this is not a racetrack. This is a place for people to get to and from work so that kids can actually travel safely to their sporting events rather than having to navigate while a 40-mile-an-hour cyclist is passing you with their electric bike delivery. This is why Jeffrey, myself, and CB1 wrote that resolution, because no one was listening to us about enforcement on the Greenway. And Hudson River Park and the Trust doesn't have any jurisdiction, so their hands are tied. That's basically a statement, a question, and a plea. And it's something that we've written about for the last 6 or 7 years that since I've been on the executive committee of the advisory council.
So one thing I can tell you is that we've done a little research into it, and we've concluded that the e-bikes and scooters are in fact banned along the bikeway. We got that determination from our legal group last week. So we can work with HRPT to put some signage up indicating that, so that it's known that it's illegal to be on the bikeway with electric bikes and scooters. As far as enforcement is concerned, we can work with HRPT to try to get NYPD to do some enforcement, but by ourselves, we don't have any enforcement capability. I don't have a police force that can go around and enforce that, but we're more than willing to work with NYPD to see what we can do.
That would be great. Does, who gives a speeding ticket to a car on the West Side Highway? NYPD or the state, because it's 9A? Who has that jurisdiction?
NYPD. NYPD has jurisdiction on all the streets and highways in New York City.
So
you will see very few state police in New York City.
So just jurisdiction is also a major issue for these communities because of 9A. And so state DOT is responsible for the maintenance of 9A and technically the Greenway, right?
The capital
Sure, property.
maintenance.
Yeah.
HRPT does the routine cleanup and snow
Yep.
removal and things like that.
And then city controls the lights, the timing of the lights on the highway, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Jurisdiction is always a major issue for us. So that's why I'm trying to really just clarify for everybody because it's a constant issue.
It's an issue for us too.
Tom, you had your hand
Yeah.
up. I'm going to go to Mary.
I can't figure, I'm sorry that I can't
All right,
figure
I
out.
saw
There's
that
no
hand.
button on my computer that says raise my hand, so I'm raising my hand. Several things. Thank you very much for the briefing. I live in the Rockaways and there are state troopers all over the place policing city highways and TBTA bridges and local roadways, and that would really send a shiver up the spine of some people if the state police descended for a weekend of enforcement on the West Side Highway, just for a giggle. Secondarily, the southbound lane, having participated in the design of Route 9A a long time ago, the southbound lanes have particular restrictions for left-hand turns. Like, for example, from 14th Street to Clarkson Street for 1.25 miles, you can't make a left turn because the Village and Tribeca were very concerned about traffic exiting onto local streets and flooding Washington and Greenwich and 9th Avenue. And so north of 42nd Street, there are a lot of opportunities to turn left, and south of Chambers Street, there are opportunities to turn left. But in between, there are very few, and the conversion of the meat market from what it was before to what it is now has caused tremendous traffic problems at 14th Street going north. So it would be wonderful if State DOT might use this opportunity to start a dialogue with us. And maybe we have a little charrette or something where the trust and advisory council members who are interested, State DOT, look at a full range of options that might help us. Because I think it's really worth the investment, and I'm really happy that you're here today. We really need State DOT's participation.
Okay. I'm just writing all this down so I don't forget anything.
Don't worry, Craig. We'll be sure to follow up with you, I promise. Thank you for that, Tom. Mary?
Hi, Craig, I'm chairing a safety committee for the advisory council, and our top issue, and we're a very new committee, was the bikeway. And it became clear very quickly, as you just stated, that enforcement is the critical issue. It's not really jurisdiction, it's enforcement, and obviously DOT doesn't have enforcement. Now, you just said you could work with HRPT to get NYPD to increase enforcement, but
we can try.
Can't you do that by yourself? I mean, obviously it'd be great if you're coordinating efforts, but you don't need Hudson River Park to invite the police in. You can invite the police in, can't you?
Sure. I mean, but that doesn't mean they're going to listen to me.
Okay.
My thinking is if we work with HRPT together, that's at least 2 against 1. So I don't know, maybe that improves the odds.
It enlarges your voice.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that's really the key is we need to be holding the police feet to the fire to help keep that bikeway safe. And the main problem is, of course, every entrance to the park crosses that bikeway. There's just so many possibilities for conflicts of traffic when vehicles like electric bikes, electric scooters, electric skateboards I've seen the Revel scooters on the bikeway. You know, there's just so much potential for accidents to happen.
Thank you, Mary. Alan?
Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you, gentlemen, for coming to our meeting tonight. Craig, prior to the COVID shutdown, any idea how much traffic came down Route 9?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the numbers, but there was a significant amount of traffic.
So as you mentioned before, that traffic is going to have to go somewhere. So I think in terms of the communities that are on the east side, some sort of a traffic study, whether we use emergency proclamation on this would really need to be performed before we go ahead, and the communities would need to know that this is somehow being presented as a possibility, and it's going to be turning into an environmental study as well, as we have trucks, cement trucks, UPS trucks, everybody else finding an easier way to get down the highway if you go down to 2 lanes. But just talking about the section between 34th Street and 23rd Street, one issue I just wanted to bring to the attention, and I'm also with Mary on the safety committee, as things have opened up and on the crossover from 26th Street, you now have, and you had for quite a while, cars stopping on the highway to let people off and to pick up people who are going into the park, which is, I'm surprised at this point there hasn't been anything drastic happen there. So we do need the enforcement picture. We do need to have officers of either PEP officers, NYPD officers, or state troopers on some of these locations. There are certain spots that are probably more aggravating than other spots, but signage is helpful. But we've had signs on there, dismount your bike before you come onto the walkway, the Esplanade, and they just travel right on through. So now you're seeing, besides all the skateboards and electric bikes, you've got these miniature motorcycles running up and down who are making deliveries. The other issue in that section is the heliport. So you have cars coming down southbound that are going to start going into the parking lot, and they make a right turn into the heliport. They cross over 2 lanes. And the problem is the bikers have the green light and the traffic has the green light. So that also needs to be addressed. And if you're going to move another lane out, now they're going to have to cross over 3 lanes. So enforcement is an important thing, and I think some sort of a traffic study and how this is going to affect everybody in the park and on the east side of the highway in the communities needs to be done before we take any actions on this. But thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Tammy?
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I wanted to double check about the conversation for us, enforcement is the greatest question because we've seen Revel riders coming directly down through HRPT into Battery Park City, off onto 9A, on sidewalks. We've actually seen them everywhere except where they're supposed to be for the most part on the street, which is rather frustrating. So enforcement is huge. Huge, 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 huge. I cannot explain enough how enforcement is a concern. And secondarily, we in CB1 fully supported the use of West Street up until Chambers, because south of Chambers Street, the entire right lane is a turn lane only, which turns West Street into a 1 or 2 lane road, depending on the turns and World Trade Center campus and things like that. So it's important to note that we have a little bit more complications, but we are incredibly looking forward to an opportunity where the Greenway is used by bicyclists, not motorized, unless of course it's an accessibility issue. No revels, no motorized food vendors, things like that. They all belong on the street.
Tammy, I misspoke. I said the Battery, but it was Chambers Street, which is the southern park boundary as well. So thank you for clarifying that.
No problem. I mean, the thought for CB1 is what we can do to help enhance the experience for bicyclists from the Battery up through the edge of our borders is what we want. And the concern is that you don't have a lot of kids who are happy to ride on the Greenway because it's frankly not safe. I mean, I've got 3 kids. I'm an equal opportunity offender. I have 3 kids and a dog, a car, bicyclist, and scooters. And I can tell you that I don't feel sometimes safe riding my scooter on the Greenway. And I'm talking like a push scooter, you know, a Zooter scooter. I'm not talking anything with a throttle. So yeah, enforcement and anything that we can do to reimagine that, and then take a look and think of resiliency on top of that.
Thank you for that. Craig, there's been a lot of asks around safety improvements based on the highway. And I wonder, and we've never had a direct answer from the numerous city agencies that I myself and my community board, which is Community Board 4, Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, have reached out to, and I know others have as well, and I believe this advisory council has as well. It would be great if, given that I believe the Greenway is under direct jurisdiction of the state would commit to a count of use of cyclists on the Greenway. City planning has not done that in a long time. The numbers from the city are inconsistent. And this would really help inform state DOT, who I recognize that the majority of your purview is for vehicles. But in the city of New York, you know, vehicles are actually a minority and vehicle owners are a minority. And so how, you know, we can help DOT better think about transit outside of cars, knowing the cyclist use and having that number consistently would be really helpful in a lot of ways. Do you guys do counts of cyclists anywhere else in the state? Or how about car counts? Are there examples you can think of there?
Well, we certainly do car counts. I don't see why we couldn't do a bikeway count. I can talk to my traffic guys and find out about it.
That's pretty fantastic.
I don't think that should be a really big lift.
That would be a super helpful information.
One thing I would say about what you're going to find about bikeway counts is that they're going to be, over the course of a year, they're going to be seasonal. They're going to be a lot higher in July than they are in January.
Absolutely. And I think that when you look at, I believe it's the Manhattan Bridge that has a cyclist count on it. I think it's triple of what the typical time of it is this year. And interestingly, city bike use across the city of New York is on par with use last year, even though the central business district is basically empty. So cyclist use across the board has skyrocketed. And so while the numbers may change seasonally, I think we're going to see some real habitual changes, short and long term, and beginning to understand that data from state DOT would be extremely helpful.
Jeffrey, I'm just going to add that during that study, it'd be really helpful to understand the percentage of illegal vehicles that are on the bike path as well. What percentage of the bikes traveling on the bikeway, Greenway, are actually electric bikes that have throttles? I think that you'll find that it's 25%. And what do we do about that? And what happens when people get injured? And we have members on this board who have been injured by such bikes. So it's just, it's a concern for all of us as it gets busier and busier.
I have a question. Is Craig suggesting that you can get us a vehicle count for the Greenway or for 9A?
No, I was going to say we might be able to do one on the bikeway.
Right. It would be helpful if there's any way to have those figures compare with any other figures so that we can understand what those numbers mean.
Yeah, the back data is pretty haphazard. The way it's been presented. City planning did it long ago. I believe city DOT looked at it a time or two, but nobody ever gives us an answer.
Yeah, it would be hard to understand context with just a raw number, you know.
Okay.
Thank you, Craig. Wendy, and then Tom, I see your hand, don't worry.
Hi, I was wondering, we have so many issues to talk about with state DOT and I think possibly also city DOT on safety. If we might think about, you know, if we could have DOT back for like, you know, a specialized discussion on safety. I mean, it obviously relates to the discussion we were going to have on the Greenway, but I would like to go back to that and hear more perhaps from DOT if that's possible. The issues DOT raised were congestion pricing, the need for environmental review. And I'm wondering if DOT would be able to expand on what you've already said about, you know, our letter, in response to our letter on the Greenway, expanding the bikeway, you know, onto 9A. And if, you know, I don't want to drop that as our position, so don't misunderstand when I ask you if you see like perhaps other alternatives. But we all agree that the current bikeway is not big enough for the number of bikers and pedestrians. So could you talk a little more about that, Mr. Rule? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I think I can say too much more about it right now just because I don't have a lot of the information. Part of the thing about the environmental study is we don't know if we would have to do one or not. We would have to start, we would have to have our designers look into a design proposal, and then there's a whole bunch of steps that would tell us if we had to do a study or not. We haven't done that. We haven't looked into it. Like I said, these are just concerns that we have that, you know, are why we couldn't just go out and throw down a line of barrier and do this. But we can look more into it for sure.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
It would. I think it was when the governor announced that he wasn't going to let the L train tunnel shut down for 2 years because he brought engineers together from New York State's best engineering schools to come up with ideas on how to not shut the tunnel down. And he made it happen. I wonder if we can get some really good engineers behind a re-engineering of the highway to better accommodate the significant increase in cyclists. And that would not only protect and provide for that use, but ideally extend significant safety measures to people getting to and from the park. Wendy, you just had your question. I know there's some members of the public here. I'm not sure. Andrew, I just saw your hand go up.
Yeah, Jeffrey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I would echo the comment you just made. I think we're in such an uncertain time. We don't know what's going to happen with vehicular traffic on the West Side Highway, when people will get comfortable going back to public transportation. So I think a more holistic view as to a redesign of the entire sort of transportation infrastructure on the West Side Highway is really critical to this conversation. As opposed to just closing a lane.
Thank you. Commissioner, I saw your hand just go up.
I was curious. I mean, this is taking the conversation back to enforcement, but have there been conversations with NYPD about enforcement out there? I'm certainly, you know, I know that they are out there for events and things like that. Has the community board also sought their help with this?
Yeah, we've reached out to the 6th over the years, and it's kind of a quid pro quo in a way. You help us with the felonies at Pier 40, and we'll put some officers at checkpoints at Pier 40, and that might be for one day, and then they're gone. So it hasn't been very successful. I've tried, and I've kind of given up. I think we need someone else from a more authoritative position to actually recommend it.
Good.
Yeah. Andrew, you just spoke. Just going through my list here. Shirley Secunda, member of the public and the chair of the Transportation Committee from Community Board 2. Shirley?
She's muted, I think. She's muted.
Shirley, you're still muted. There you go.
Okay, here I am.
There we are.
Craig, I'm just wondering if state DOT would consider a tactical urbanism approach that is something temporary, an experiment. During these crazy times, lots of this has been tried. We've had this kind of thing being done with open streets and open restaurants in New York City. They actually have been pretty successful. It doesn't mean they'll remain forever, but people are talking now about actually extending some to be permanent. And is there any possibility that you could take a piece of 9A and do some kind of temporary type bikeway experiment, see how it works? A lot of this has been done with tactical urbanism.
Thank you, Shirley. Craig, any comment on, have there been temporary measures taken elsewhere across the state or parallels that you might be able to draw?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, that doesn't mean that there haven't been any done, but none that are just jumping out at me.
Thank you for that, Shirley. I think that's definitely worth us digging in a bit more on. Paul, and then Tom.
Thank you very much. Craig, question for you. And firstly, thank you both for coming along. I'd love to see the ability to have bikes and more space for us on the West Side Highway. I've heard the comments you've made before. I'm just wondering, to the limit you are comfortable, what would need to happen next at DOT for this to happen? I've heard some things you mentioned. I think a count would be great on what's on the Greenway now to help get numbers. But more importantly, we want to actually get this done, whether it's temporary as a trial, which sounds great, or the full one. I know it's a huge task, but so I'm curious what needs to happen next, please.
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you about what you should do next. Everybody is aware of the desire to turn this into a bike lane, and right now the department is not comfortable doing that. That doesn't mean that they're not going to change their minds at some point, but that's the feeling right now.
I mean, again, you're on the spot here in front of lots of people. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but if it's that the department's not comfortable, it either means somebody in the department or somebody above the department. So,
well, there's probably a little of both.
And so the elected officials that represent us, we should be talking to our state elected officials to tell them our opinion. Is that the message to take?
That's one way to go. That's definitely one way to go.
And Paul,
suggestions.
Paul, just so you know, the invitation this evening came out of a letter from our state and city elected officials requesting this expansion, and also the attendance of the State Parks Commissioner and State DOT. So we're certainly having those conversations, and I think this is really a starting point for a lot of this right now.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Absolutely.
Wendy, I will say that everything that I'm just going to say that I will take everything that I get from this meeting and take it back to our commissioner.
Thank you. Wendy, was there anything else based on just the elected official factor of initial thoughts you have, or any of the other reps? I know I saw representatives from other offices here as well to add in that regard.
I don't think so. I think I want to say, we really appreciate DOT coming and, how seriously you're taking this. And I appreciate that you said, you'll follow up also. So no, but thank you for asking. And thanks again for coming. We hope to see you again.
Yes, agree. I am going to, part of my job as chair is to keep us to time this evening. And I appreciate this conversation because I think it was very useful. I hope there's some quick takeaways that we can get. Understanding a bike count, a cyclist use count would be fantastic. And we can certainly follow up with a whole bunch of information. And I do believe you were taking notes as you were looking to the side there, Craig. So,
oh yeah, lots of notes.
And Commissioner Kulisade, thank you also for joining us and your questions. I know you'll hear my report from this at the trust meeting coming up as well. And so anything you want to bring to that side of the conversation, we appreciate as well. So with that, I'm going to move to the next portion of our meeting, unless anybody from State Parks or DOT has a closer, because we really appreciate this and just want to be cognizant of everybody's time.
I just had one quick thought. And I don't know that you could do it with all of the electric bikes and scooters, but maybe with a company like Revel. All of these things probably have some kind of GPS in them. And I wonder if they could do what they do with golf carts, if you've ever played golf. The carts just stop and don't let you drive onto the greens. Could a company like Revel put some kind of, I don't know, GPS sensor in there that these areas are off limits and it just won't drive there?
I think a lot of these vehicles are actually privately owned, the ones that are most troublesome, besides the Revel. I think Revel is a new problem, but it's just adding to or exacerbating the issues that already exist there. So I don't think people will be self-motivated to put on any kind of GPS system, as a golf course is willing to do that as a golfer to make sure that the fairways are protected. I wish it was true, but I don't think it's possible. I think a lot of folks are racing down there because they're either have deliveries to make or a lot of them are cyclists too. Cyclists moving too fast. I mean, years ago, Noreen talked about possibly putting rivets or grooves so that you really couldn't go too fast, and your vehicle, your bike could begin to shake. I don't know if that's an option, but any way to control the speed of the traffic will certainly help.
Okay.
Thank you. Nancy, is this on this or Commissioner, did you have, sorry, Nancy, hold on one sec. Commissioner, did you want to close with?
I just want to say, obviously, thank you for inviting me to be on, and obviously, please be on the board of HRPT. We are, most of our parks across the state, we do have obviously traffic issues, maybe hiking. We are actually dealing with the e-bike thing a little bit ourselves. We've actually allowed Class 1 bikes in most of our parks and on things like the Empire State Trail, but it's clearly a different beast in this neighborhood where you just have this congestion issue. But all these things are certainly issues that we face as well as state parks.
Thank you. And thank you both for being here. Nancy?
Hi, just two quick things. Well, not that quick. One of them is that without any enforcement, there's no reason for anyone not to operate electric vehicles on the Greenway. That's what we're drilling down into, is that Revel has no reason to do it. They're not going to feel any effect of their customers. I've spoken with them recently. I had a long conversation, a correspondence with them. And they said, yes, they have GPS. They can tell when somebody's in the wrong place. They claim that they can tell if someone's in the bike lane on one side of a street, that their GPS is so sensitive, which I know is not a possible thing with existing technology. But then you still someone has to call and have them look up whether or not they had a vehicle there. That's something about their GPS. But without any enforcement, people see one person riding a scooter and they figure, it's much safer for me to ride my e-bike or my scooter there, or I'm not going to get hit by a car. So again, enforcement ends up being one of our problems, and there is no incentive for anybody else to self-police it. The other thing that I wanted to ask about really quickly is about businesses or tenants directing traffic on the bike path, whether or not that's something. For instance, someone has a business like Pier 66 Maritime, for instance. They have a lot of dinner guests that are going to be leaving. What's the legality of them stationing one of their employees there and stopping cyclists there so that their people can cross? Is that something that's permitted? Is that not permitted? Because we have a lot of new tenants that are going to be coming in really soon, including Pier 55 and the people at Pier 57. And there are going to be a lot more conflicts when that, between pedestrians and bike path users, and in the case of Pier 57, also cars. So what's the legality, since that's DOT owned, of people that are not part of enforcement or that are not authorized specifically by the DOT, having somebody out there putting up a hand and saying bike traffic stop, pedestrians go, vehicle traffic stop, pedestrians go, or something like that. That's my question. Thanks.
I actually don't know. I'll have to go and talk to our legal department about that.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Wendy?
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb here in response to the comments from the regional director at DOT, but also in the chat about how their Rebel bikes and others could be conceivably prevented from going into the park. And the limb I'm going to go out on is that our office will draft a letter. Suggestions here. Should we do it directly to the company, or do we do it to whoever enforces the rules on the electric bikes and scooters? But we can certainly draft a letter to whoever to prevent them from going into the park, because they're not allowed to go into the park. Sorry, was that rambling?
I think that makes sense. And asking these companies to speak to that is important.
And in fact, you know, that wasn't in the legislation that said they weren't allowed to be in the park, but you know, maybe it should have been that they have to install that on the bikes. It's a thought for us to look at that legislatively. Thank you. Susanna is nodding.
Thank you. Tom, I see I missed you because your hand was up visually, not virtually. So
I can't figure it out.
That's all right.
Oh.
Go ahead with that comment, and then I'm going to move to Erica and JC, please.
No, I'm just saying to the director that the highway was designed in 1989 through 1992, and the EIS completed in 93. It's been almost 30 years since the roadway was built. The inboard and outboard land uses have changed drastically. You know, residential on 42nd, Hudson Center, the Meatpacking District, Pier 57, you know, you name it. I don't know what the normal interval is for looking at highway design to basically have it adapt to reality, but it would seem like 30 years is a reasonable amount of time given the precipitous change and the fact that none of this could have been anticipated 30 years ago through nobody's fault. Secondarily, if New York State DOT would take the insurance liability for the bike path, it might get the governor's office to pay more attention to solving these problems.
Thank you, Tom. You're here. Erica?
I was just wondering, you know, years and years ago, as this has come up, there was a discussion that you could not put speed bumps or grates or anything on the bikeway because it was built with state DOT money as a highway. Is that some crazy 18-year-old rumor, or is there some fact to this? Because that clearly would slow things.
I don't know. I don't know what the current design standards are for bikeways and if speed bumps are permissible or not.
It was a FWHA approved project, and the money came from FHWA along with the Chelsea Park money. So it was funded.
Yeah, 9A is
right.
All federal money.
But the bike path was as well. So I don't know if federal standards apply.
So
just real quick, for sure you can do speed bumps on bikeways. New York City Parks has a number of places where they have, you know, traffic calming devices on the bikeway. And I would say the bollards kind of serve that effect. I mean, it causes a lot of problems, but it definitely makes bicyclists slow down. Just to throw one other thing out there on the to-do list, you know, City DOT really does a lot of work on both e-bikes and on bike volume in general, and it might be worth meeting with their bike program coordinator, Ted Wright, and talking to him about efforts, including potentially, you know, getting more bike lanes installed on some of the parallel city streets to the highway. You know, I think a lot of these delivery guys are kind of scooting over from the inboard Manhattan route because there's no traffic lights, but if there was better alternatives closer inboard, they may be more, you know, willing to use those bike lanes as well. So that might be, you know, again, as opposed to providing an alternative to the highway might be beneficial as well.
Okay.
I do want to continue to be respectful of time. We're JC.
I just wanted to address the comment that Nancy made before. We do it at Frying Pan. We often do put a person out near the bike path, but we never felt we had the authority and wanted to take the liability for stopping the bikes. But we did often put a person out there just to kind of tell people, please stop, wait for the bikes, don't go into the street, wait for the light to turn red and that kind of thing. So just wanted to put that out there.
I didn't mean to suggest that you hadn't done that.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I just wanted
that,
people.
That's just an example. The first business that I thought of, aside from Chelsea Piers, was you guys, and that's sometimes in a normal year, there are a great number of pedestrians crossing there thanks to the strength of that business. That was just a.
Yeah, and we haven't obviously done it as much this year because of where we are, but we have done it in the past, and we kind of copied what Chelsea Piers was doing. We thought it was just a good idea. We just weren't doing it directly on the bike path.
Right.
Well, thank you again, Commissioner. Greg, thank you for being here. It seems like, we're not in school, but we gave you a whole bunch of homework. So we look forward to learning a lot more with you guys and continuing this dialogue, because I think that we all want things to be better. And I think that we can, with greater understanding and a lot of that data we spoke to, I think we can get there by hitting hard from various angles, which I think this group is really good at doing, given the types of folks we're made up with. So thank you for that. And I'm going to move to the final portion of our meeting, which is old business, to see if anybody has anything quick to raise. And if not, I was going to run by everybody a topic for our next meeting. Any?
Yes, I do. Delay.
Sure. Hi, Delay. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, this is a question for Noreen. It's a question regarding the West Waterside Park facing north on 26th Street. There's a basketball court that's full of guys playing late at night. There's so many of them that sometimes they cannot play because there are more than 100. One night we're counting. There are more than 100 kids there, and it's very easy access. There's no gate. If there's a gate, there's a little gate there, but you can actually jump over it. And I was wondering if the park is doing anything about it. It needs to be closed because we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and the parks needs to take some responsibility. I've seen the little patrol car, but they're doing nothing. They watch the kids play, or not really play, socialize in there, and they're not doing anything. But they close at what, 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the evening.
Right.
That's the question.
So all of the sports facilities in the park basically have reopened, and they have been for a while. And basically as you know, I mean, the park's never fully closed because people need a place to recreate. The main tool that we've been using for safety is officers going around with masks and trying to encourage people to do that. There have been times where people are asked to vacate a space if it's overcrowded, but frankly, one PEP officer can't get that many players out. That needs support probably from the police department, which also is doing a lot of other things right now. So Delay, I mean, I think that the best thing to do, I don't think that relying on whether you see an officer doing something or not is probably the best way or the best gauge for activity. On our website is a 24-hour, 24/7 phone number that is answered by the Park Enforcement Patrol. That is the best tool for centralizing information that anybody has about any safety or other concern, broken water fountain, whatever it is, because that lets us track it and see patterns and other things that Dennis was talking about earlier. It also allows our front desk to call PD or somebody else directly if that is something that they need support on. They could be 5 blocks away, 10 blocks away. It could be just one officer. As a kind of general reminder, the maximum number of PEP officers that we have at any shift, I believe, is 7. I don't know if Dennis is still on. I can certainly confirm that. That includes people at the, monitoring cameras here. The way the contract works, if somebody is out sick on a particular day from city parks, these are not our direct employees. We don't have a backup shelf of a bunch of people that can just go in and replace at the last minute. So we don't always have the full complement of people that we've contracted for. So generally, it is very difficult to patrol 4 miles and many, many long, skinny piers that are sometimes, a quarter of a mile in their own right, long with the number of officers we have. So the best thing to do, and I say this broadly to everybody, is get in the habit of calling the 24/7 number when you see something that you think doesn't look right and report it there. And I
Just one thing. Just one thing. The soccer field is closed. I never see anybody playing there.
No, the soccer
field next door.
It is open.
And your officers and the patrol people on the cars are not wearing masks. I see them 4 nights a week.
So delay.
Can you?
As I said.
Noreen, if I may,
yeah, James, go ahead.
Could you have more information on the date and time that you saw 100 people in the basketball court? Because I'll look into that. We do have cameras in the area. I'll be able to see, what's going on and make sure that we direct the PEP properly. Do you have a date and time?
I probably do, because when I came home, I reported to the governor's website.
Okay.
And
if you can.
That's what I did.
I'll be more than happy to look into that. Clearly, 100 people on that basketball court is a lot.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that if that was the case, nobody was playing basketball. It would have been.
No, was not. Just socializing.
So yeah.
Thank you, Dennis.
Who is this talking? Is this
Dennis McCarty?
McCarty, okay.
Okay, and then I'll look into that. As far as the soccer field is open daily. There's a lot of soccer clubs that have been using it.
Not at night. I'm talking just at night, late at night, 11 o'clock at night.
11 o'clock, yeah, they're probably done by then.
Yeah.
But I will definitely have them look into that. If you can send me a little bit more detailed information on time and date, and we can address it.
All right.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Delay. And just Mary popped the number for that 24-hour number at the trust into the chat box. I also popped into the chat box that attendance form link. For anybody that hasn't filled it out yet, please do so. That way everybody's counted. We love counting people, by the way. Be sure to fill out the census if you haven't already, speaking of counting. But with that, I want you to know that I'm beginning up. Susanna, go ahead.
I just wanted, before we break, I wanted to thank you, Jeffrey, for sending us material in advance, for having such a detailed agenda, and for being so mindful of time. Thanks.
Thank you. Glad to do that. Hoping we can continue. And I want to flag the fact that, as already mentioned at the beginning, actually, CSOs, somebody who have been a hot topic, the sewage overflows, and see, Susanna, yeah. What does the C stand for, Noreen?
Combined.
Thank you. Combined
I looked that up. I went on Google and everything. I felt so stupid. Thank you. Combined sewage overflow. Thank you.
So we're going to look to make that be a bigger a focal point of the next meeting, given that this has been repeatedly brought up. And I also want to share just sort of a cadence factor, based on the reporting we're going to get from the trust and also our committees as they begin to meet regularly. What I'd like to gauge from you guys is I've been thinking about, should we have a dry meeting and then the next month have a wet meeting? So park, water. I don't know if that, I don't drink while I'm chairing meetings, so others could interpret that differently. But that's something I thought that we could find a way to really be able to dig in on particular topics. I think we all recognize that there are a long list that we each hold individually, that we, have as a group. But I thought about that as a way to be able to bring focus to a meeting, and also as a way to hopefully be able to get, particular things done as we continue working together. Any initial thoughts on that? I'm open to, but obviously we all have each other's contact information. Tom, I just saw your hand go up.
Yeah, it was just as long as it wouldn't be limited. If there were a land issue that was pressing that came up in the 2-month period, it could still be on the agenda. I don't see any problem with doing that, but I think it would be great to, like you did this time, pick a topic, stick on it, move along to the next one, and get the responsible parties, as you did, to join us so that there can be follow-up, and then follow-up in small committees. Makes a lot of sense.
Tom, I couldn't agree more that if obviously something timely comes up that's on the land and we're talking about water, we're going to talk about it. So Daniel?
I just want to mimic what was just said by Tom. I think today was one of the most successful meetings we've ever had. Because we were able to dive deeply into one subject, and we had folks that actually might be able to make a difference rather than speaking 10 minutes here and there. And I like the idea. We don't spend enough time sometimes on water, in my mind. I think that it's important for us to really investigate that. So I'm all for it.
You're here.
Okay. I really appreciate everybody's work that went into this meeting. The reports take a lot of work, but I hope that they make things more efficient. So if there's more that people want to, Noreen, a couple of folks raised the oyster concern going in around the piers in Tribeca. And, Noreen hadn't put a whole bunch in the report about that, but we spoke about it today. So as stuff comes up like that, to me, it's totally appropriate to raise once we have the report. If there's something we want to hear a little bit more on, that's where we can begin to start to open that up. But if any other, Michael, sorry, just noticed your hand.
Everybody. Yeah, Jeffrey, I want to say thanks to you. Terrific work setting up and facilitating these meetings. Really do appreciate that. Some things that I would like to talk about are the budget cuts to that have been announced, and what the reaction or response is going to be, what the plan is for that, and how we can use our voices to help. I would also like to, there are some conversations about enforcement that frankly make me not uncomfortable, but make me a little bit wary when we talk so much about enforcement, because I think I would like to spend some time talking about welcome and education and how they can make the park safer and of course more accessible for everybody. I'd like to actually really drill down into looking at the fine education programs that we have already, but also thinking about the ways that education can help people interact in the park. I'm specifically thinking right away about bicycle education and the need for people to really understand that it's not really, there's nothing inherently dangerous about an e-bike. It's speed and consideration of other people, that are the real problems. And I would like to spend some time talking about the education programming of Hudson River Park, the budget cuts, and I would specifically like to talk about welcome as it relates to safety and diversity and access.
That is, thank you for that. And multiple people echoed your comments about budget in the chat. Noreen, I wonder if we can talk separately about what that might look like. Tony, likewise, if we can have a conversation, and maybe we do have a bit of a financial update from the trust, from Friends, and what that looks like and how it might affect the park. Because I think everybody would agree that this is all just beginning. So perhaps we have a financial discussion and we talk sewage next time. Sometimes those are tied together. And Michael, also noting on your education, sorry to make the joke and then pivot to this, but I think that that's also critical. And I think that The work of the safety committee has just begun, on which you sit as well. And I want to be getting more involved with those meetings too. But I think that weaving that into all of what we talk about on this is important. And would definitely like to hear more if you have resources or information to share on what we can do or what we can share as well on that would be helpful. Any other questions? Wendy, I see you shared some background reading for CSOs and infrastructure. And Mary, thank you for pointing out that CSO is when toilet sewage mixes with stormwater runoff, and it's the overflow from what our waste treatment plants can't handle. Is that a correct summation? Yeah. That is it is a great book. It's an excellent book to read, actually. I'm getting off topic. So I'm gonna, any other questions? If you haven't filled out that attendance form, please do so. Please feel free to reach out. Our next meeting is going to be, I think it's about a month from now, Tuesday, October 6th, which is a month before Election Day. You still have time to register to vote if you haven't, and you can certainly request an absentee ballot. And again, if you didn't fill out the census already, please do that, because that will actually make the park potentially get some funding and show some needs for our community. So if there's no other questions, I'll request a motion to adjourn. Saw a couple of hands. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your participation in this productive meeting. See you all soon.
Bye, Jeffrey.
Hi, everyone.
Take care.
Jeffrey, not very good notes this time. Sorry. Might have to go to the recording.
I took some too.
We'll mash them together. I appreciate
Okay.
what you put together, and Noreen, you too. Thank you both for that a lot. Bye, everybody.
Bye.